I was 27 when I moved into that shoebox of an apartment above an old restaurant in Atlanta. Rent was suspiciously cheap, and the landlord gave me the sales pitch about historic charm. What he really meant was it smelt like fryer oil no matter how many candles I lit, and every surface creaked like it was held together with tape. But I was bartending then, barely scraping by, and when you're living tip to tip, you don't argue with $500 a month. I'd finish my shifts at 2 a.m., snag a leftover burger on the way home, and drag myself up the narrow staircase that led to my apartment. I'd kick off my shoes, crack a beer, and put something dumb on the TV until I could sleep. The walls shook when the freight trains rolled through, and the floorboards vibrated when trucks hit potholes outside. I got used to noise, so when I first heard the scraping, I thought nothing of it, just rats. The building was old and the restaurant downstairs had been closed for years. God knows what lived in those walls. It sounded like claws dragging across the underside of the floorboards, maybe even something chewing. I laughed about it to a coworker the next day. "Guess I got new roommates," I said. But the noise kept happening every night around the same time, scraping, dragging, then silence. Once I swore I heard the flick of a lighter. A week later, after another shift, I dropped onto the couch, cracked a beer, and set my plate of fries on the table. Then I heard it again, right beneath where I sat. I stopped the floor with my heel like an idiot, hoping to scare off whatever was down there. The sound stopped. I thought it had worked until I went to the kitchen for ketchup and noticed one of the floorboards near the fridge was slightly lifted, like someone had pried it up and set it back. I crouched down, ran my hand across it, and felt fresh scrape marks along the edge. The wood dust was too clean to be old. That night, every time a truck passed outside, I thought it was something moving under me. The next day, curiosity tugged at me all day, and by nightfall, I couldn't help myself. I had to see for myself. I wedged a screwdriver under that loose board and pried it up. What I saw wasn't rat droppings or old wiring. It was cigarette butts, fresh ones, a couple of crumbs, looked like bread or crackers. Someone had been sitting under my damn floor, smoking and eating. In case you're wondering, I smoked too, so I couldn't smell it over the smell of my own cigarettes. My stomach turned when I realized the butts were still stained with yellow, like they hadn't been there long. And when I looked closer, something down there was lit. The restaurant's kitchen. It was supposed to be dark, locked, abandoned, but I could see a soft glow, and it was glinting off the stainless steel like someone was walking through with a flashlight. I slammed the board back down, shoved my fridge against it, and sat there with my phone in my hand for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell to do. The next day, I asked the landlord if anyone was supposed to be in the restaurant. He said, "Nah, place is shut tight. Probably your imagination. Rats chew wires, lights flicker. You know how it is." He grinned like I just told him a joke. I knew I wasn't imagining it. When I got home that night, 2 more boards looked like they'd been lifted and reset. That's when I started noticing little things out of place in my apartment too. A fork missing from the drawer. My lighter moved from the counter to the windowsill. Nothing stolen, nothing big, just enough to let me know someone had been up here when I was gone. I decided I needed proof. I bought a cheap motion detect camera off Amazon, battery-powered, and set it up to face the gap in the floor near the fridge. First night, nothing but static. Second night, the camera triggered at 2:24 a.m. I pulled up the file the next morning, excited and terrified, but the footage, there was nothing. Just a low sound of scraping, then nothing. Third night, success. The feed showed the kitchen, dim and grainy, and a figure circling the room in slow loops, head down, hands in pockets, pacing like he was walking a track. My stomach flipped when I zoomed in. I stared at that footage for an hour, hoping I was wrong. But whoever was down there wasn't just some random squatter. He'd been in my apartment, digging through my stuff. That night, I parked my pickup at the side alley facing the restaurant door. Around 2 in the morning, I saw the glow again through the kitchen window. I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the side door. The padlock was still looped, but hanging loose, not latched. I pushed the door open and stepped into the kitchen. Then there was a breath behind me. just behind me. Or maybe it was the wind pushing through the vents. I spun around fast with the light shaking in my hand. Nothing. Then came the slam. A door deeper in the restaurant banged shut. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Then silence. I bolted. Cops showed up 20 minutes later. They swept the place, found candy wrappers, more butts, a pile of cans in a corner. Squatters, they said. Could be anyone. I showed them the camera footage. One officer frowned. Looks like a trespasser. Yeah, probably homeless. We'll keep an eye on it. That was it. No follow-up, no arrests. I moved out a week later, left half my stuff behind because I couldn't shake the thought of some guy pacing under my feet, listening to me eat, sleep, breathe. To this day, I won't rent a place above a business. Don't trust it. I've seen what lives in the cracks.
I was living in Buffalo while grinding through my second year of nursing school. My apartment was one of those places you take because it's cheap and close to campus, not because you love it. Drafty old house chopped up into 3 units. Mine was on the 2nd floor. 1 bedroom, squeaky radiator, creaky doors, and just enough space to pile textbooks on every surface. You didn't thrive there. You adapted, one habit at a time. Every night I'd grab an energy drink from the mini fridge, prop my laptop on the kitchen table, and stay up way too late highlighting notes until the words blurred together. The glow of my screen was usually the only light in the place after midnight. The radiator hissed, the wind rattled the windows, and I'd have the noise of the fridge to remind me I wasn't completely alone in the silence. I wasn't the type to spook easy. Nursing school had already fried my nerves. Most nights I was too tired to care about noises. But then one night, the attic fan came on. It was just after 3 a.m. I remember because I'd promised myself I'd quit studying by midnight, and like always, I blew right past it. I was hunched over pharmacology notes when I heard the fan start above me. The thing is, the attic fan was ancient, one of those noisy box units screwed into the roofline. The only way to turn it on was through a switch in my bedroom. My bedroom, behind a locked door. I sat there listening at first, thinking I was imagining it. Then it kicked off just as suddenly. Dead quiet again. I laughed it off. Great, now the wiring's haunted too. Old houses do weird things. I told myself that 3 times before I finally went to bed. The next night, it happened again, around the same time. I was scrolling notes on my laptop and there it was, the fan groaning awake above me, spinning, vibrating faintly through the ceiling beams. This time I walked into my bedroom. The switch was still down, off. I flicked it up, then down again just to be sure. The sound kept going. I stood there, staring at the ceiling, clutching my phone like it would help. Eventually it wound down and clicked off. I didn't sleep much that night. A couple days later, I was dragging trash to the curb when my downstairs neighbor, an older guy named Martin, asked, "Hey, your roommate's still running those trains up there?" I looked at him. What? You know, model trains. I hear them sometimes. Little electric whir, clack clack, like tracks. I just stared. I don't have a roommate. He looked embarrassed, muttered something about old houses carrying sound funny, and shuffled back inside. The thing was, he wasn't wrong. I had heard a faint clacking up there the night before, layered under the fan noise. I'd chalked it up to pipes or maybe mice. Hearing him describe it made my whole body tense up. I tried to logic my way through it. Maybe the landlord wired the fan wrong. Maybe the switch wasn't connected right. Maybe Martin was mistaking my late-night typing for train sounds. One night, I stacked my heaviest textbooks against the hatch. It was stupid, I knew, but it made me feel like I had a barrier. It was close to finals week, and I was up again, past midnight. The apartment was quiet. I didn't notice how quiet it was until the only thing I could hear was my typing. Then, out of nowhere, the attic fan kicked on. Not just the hum this time. Then came the clacking again, with a rhythm like wheels on a track. I froze. My first thought wasn't ghosts. It was, someone was up there. Someone had been up there for days. I called my landlord. It was past midnight, but he picked up, groggy. I told him flat out, "I think there's someone in the attic." He laughed. "Impossible. That attic's sealed. I've got the only key." "Then explain the fan," I snapped. Silence. Then he sighed and said he'd come by in the morning. He showed up with a key ring and a flashlight. I stood back while he popped the hatch. A rush of stale, warm air hit us, and the smell of burnt food. He climbed up first, then cursed. Jesus! I followed enough to see over the edge. In the attic, a thin mattress rolled against the beams, a blanket, a hot plate still plugged into an extension cord, and beside it, a little plastic case with model train parts, wheels, track sections, wiring. Whoever had been there was gone. The landlord muttered about squatters, said maybe someone slipped in months ago. The police came, looked around and said, probably transient, he's gone now. Gone now, like that was supposed to make me feel better. The fan never came on again, but I kept hearing it in my mind, and that clacking sound circling above me. My textbook stayed stacked by the hatch until the day my lease ended. I started studying at the library after that. Even now, years later, when I hear a fan kick on unexpectedly, I tense up.
Mornings in my house are on autopilot. Coffee, cereal bowls lined up, spoons clinking, kids shuffling in, still half asleep. Eli, 8, and Nora, 5, already know how it works. Weekdays aren't for cartoons, just cereal, brushing teeth, and out the door. We rent an old ranch house, the kind you convince yourself has character. One bathroom, no garage, but a yard with enough sun to grow tomatoes and a fence that keeps the kids where I can see them. My landlord, Denise, lives in Allentown and sends texts with too many exclamation points. So glad you're in, you'll love the neighborhood. She gave me a folder at move-in with appliance manuals and a note that the previous tenant, Sharon, left it clean. That's all I knew about the house's past. A month in, it finally felt like ours. Shoes by the door, crayon art on the fridge, the dog's bed tucked under the window. You only learn the quirks of a house by living in it. How the front door sticks when it rains, which cabinet squeaks, the way the AC coughs before it runs. Little things you stop noticing once they become yours. One morning, something felt wrong. I had the kettle heating when I looked down the hall. At first, I couldn't tell why it felt off. Then I saw 3 muddy prints leading from the hall corner to outside the kids' bedroom. Big ones. Heel-to-tettle, crisp tread. Not the mess of kids tracking dirt. Not the stagger of a dog. Clean, careful steps. My kids were already at the table in socks. The dog hadn't moved from her bed. The doors were still locked. Yet someone had walked the hall and stopped outside my kids' door. I didn't say anything to them, just smiled and said, "Shoes, let's go." On the drive to school, I made small talk about music while my brain replayed those prints. Whoever left them had been inside minutes after walking on wet ground. When I got home, I photographed them and texted Denise. "Hey, weird thing. Muddy prints in the hall, kids asleep, doors locked. Ever had trouble with..." She replied fast, "Oh gosh, maybe a delivery person came by?" Which made no sense. I scrubbed the prints off the floor, but couldn't scrub away the fact that whoever left them hadn't made exit prints. They'd either wiped their shoes or had another way out. For a week, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself I'd overreacted. Then came the knock. It was mid-morning. A man stood on the porch, maybe late 50s, cap pulled low, faded t-shirt. He smiled like he was about to ask for directions. "Hey there, Sharon home?" I told him no one by that name lived here. "You sure?" he asked. "We knew each other. I used to stay here sometimes." I didn't open the door. "Sharon's gone." He gave me a smile that felt cold somehow. "That's too bad." Instead of leaving, he lingered, looked toward the driveway, tested the porch railing with his hand, then drifted toward the side yard like he was measuring the house. I closed the door and locked it, and even then, I wasn't sure I was safe. Minutes later, from the kitchen window,
I saw him by the fence gate. He tested the latch like it was his own door. Then he looked at the meter box before finally walking away. I called non-emergency police. An officer came by, listened, and walked the yard with me. At the meter box, he reached under the lip and pulled out a small, dull spare key. "You didn't know this was here?" he asked. I shook my head. Previous tenants probably left it. Or someone else knew. That cold, sick feeling crept in fast. That man had gone straight to the spot. That night, I double-checked every lock, moved the dog's bed into the hallway, and put a bat by the bedroom door. I kept looking down the hall where those prints had been. 3 nights later, the doorbell rang at 3:30 a.m. I didn't answer, just silence. The kind of silence that makes you listen harder. The same man came back in daylight a week later. Same cap, same shirt. "Tell Sharon I stopped by," he said through the door. Then he leaned close and smiled. I called the police again. The officer shrugged. "We'll canvass, but we can't post a car here." Denise had the locks changed that day, swearing she had no idea about the key. I needed a break, so I sent the kids to their dad's for the weekend and stayed with my sister. But when I came back, I knew the rhythm of the house had changed for good. Months later, I spotted him at the grocery store, 2 aisles away, reading the back of a cereal box. He didn't look at me, but I felt it anyway. He set the box down and left without buying anything. He never came back, or maybe he did and the camera scared him off. But I know this. The scariest part wasn't the muddy prints or the knock. It was realizing the house had a secret I never knew to ask about. A key under the meter. A detail passed from one tenant to another. A detail that man already knew.